All right, by now I'm sure you've heard of this controversy, which should surprise exactly nobody. But let's talk about it because I'd like to go a little deeper and look at what's really at the root cause of all of this madness. And I'm sure you've heard, Joe Rogan speaks English and he uses the entire pantheon of English words. Being a comedian, he tends to be edgy, meaning he pushes the boundaries of what is and is not acceptable to say. And that causes us to laugh when he can find absurdities, agree and amplify. You get the whole thing there. But of course, because he's been over the target, so to speak, he's now getting some serious pushback, especially he gets something like 4 times more viewers than Fox News. He's crushing the mainstream media, and so he needs to be stopped. They did this mashup of him dropping the dreaded landmine. Now, even growing up in the 80s, I knew not to say this particular word because, hey, we understood it was a quick path to a lot of trouble, and it's not worth it. But again, comedians have a different job description. You can love them, you can hate them, but you know what? I don't see anyone... no one has a problem with Dave Chappelle saying it. Oh, but he's, maybe, but that's a weird rule. If you think about it objectively, what about the Young Turks? I won't play this here, but you can hear these leftists saying the word over and over and over. So it is hypocrisy, and hypocrisy isn't going to change anybody's mind. They have just found a way to go after him because there's blood in the water. He's a political inconvenient. He's problematic, and this is how to try and take him down. He offered I guess you call it an apology in his Rogan-y way. You can disagree or agree with the way he went about it. It was okay. Of course, I don't think you should apologize to the mob, but it also wasn't just begging for forgiveness. It's Howard Stern doesn't have to beg for forgiveness, despite his blackface and his dropping of the dreaded word that no one can say. New York City Eric Adams brags about targeting white people specifically. No one seems to have a problem with that. You could see The Rock. I don't know if it's in this compilation or not, but you can see The Rock doing like a Chinese thing where he talks and makes fun of the Chinese accent. Okay, well, what was his response? Well, that was a long time ago. Brett Weinstein, Joe Rogan is taking flack because he's over the target. Yeah, that's really what's going on. I think, I'd like to see him gain followers from this. I'd like to see him push through it. I don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Tim Dillon says it's a political hatchet job. It's obvious to anyone with eyes. It is obvious, but you don't get through things with submission to the mob. Now, like I said, I wanted to go to the root of this. Why is this happening? Why is this even as a culture? Why is it something? Why can cancel culture even function? Why can someone be destroyed? Why is it that they can commit a sin to which there is no forgiveness? Think about it. Would this, and I've talked about this with critical race theory, would our grandparents, or our great-grandparents maybe for some of you, have fallen for critical race theory? The idea is that white people are fallen. They are sinful beyond redemption. The fact that my family didn't come to this country like 300 years after the first slaves were brought in and after the institution was abolished somehow doesn't absolve me. There is a sin for which there is no forgiveness. Well, this idea can only be propagated in atheist cultures. Only an atheist and a culture that's atheistic can be convinced of this because the very idea of the human soul is that of forgiveness and redemption. My response to Black Lives Matter is yes. And white folks have souls. A reminder that there is not a sin for which there is no forgiveness. The whore came to Jesus and wept and begged forgiveness, and he just said, okay, go out and stop doing that. As much as people find it necessary to remind us all that Black Lives Matters, another one was shot by the cops. Okay, yeah, I don't want innocent people shot. That's a terrible society to live in. But I also don't want to live in a society where nobody has a soul. Now, everybody else in American society seems to have a soul. You might say, well, all folks have souls. You're right. And all lives matter. But right now, we need to remind the culture and society at large that white folks have souls too. Like, they have a redemptive arc. They are worthy of forgiveness. They will receive forgiveness from God, from the very Creator. And it is not the role of the mob to judge and crucify. So that's what I think of that. We talked about Telemachus. The reason that the gladiatorial games ended in Rome, the reason that slavery was eventually ended, was this idea of the individual human soul. Every human being has this human soul made in the image of God, and that they deserve forgiveness and redemption, and it's not incumbent on other human beings to grant it to them. This isn't something you get from the mob. And it's something that we've forgotten, and so it's something, then we get this madness of cancel culture. You may be an atheist, you may not like organized religion and whatever your grievances are, but I bet you like living in a religious culture. By your fruit shall ye be known. It is much better to live in a Christian society where everyone believes you have a soul, and then you have your individual God-given rights, because you can't explain how they're natural rights. I talked about Sargon trying to kind of struggle. He likes all the Christian rights that are granted by the Creator, but wants to do away with the Creator because it seems, I don't know, superstitious or silly or in a violation of science. Although if you look at the mathematics behind it, as some people like Fox Day have done, fastest evolving creature on Earth that we know of is bacteria, one fixed mutation every 836 generations, 200,000 generations since the last common human chimp ancestor, giving you only 400 or so fixed mutations sitting in parallel, leaving us about 29,999,468 or whatever. Too few fixed mutations for us to evolve from the apes. If you don't like that argument, look at how difficult it is to get a functional amino acid chain which has to evolve completely perfect or it completely falls apart, or look at archaeological evidence in the Cambrian explosion and 7 million year period, where dozens of new species are found in the fossil record with no intermediary species, as was laid out by theory of evolution by natural selection by Darwin. There, say that 5 times fast. Yeah. There's a good chance that there's a creator because there's no valid competing theory. Everything I said is 30 years old, and yet it's not taught in high school and it's not taught in college. We got to a better world by believing human beings have souls, that human beings deserve redemption, that they deserve forgiveness. And if we can't get there for our ideological opponents, well, look at what happened in the Soviet Union, when nearly every member of the founding Communist Party had been shot. In the end, they all canceled each other. But at least in modern day cancel culture, we're just kicking people off the internet. And it luckily hasn't gone any farther.